Hello everyone, this is Bobbin Threadbare, and
You'll want to get the drop on him, and quiet. He can't hear what's only in your head.
Well, he's not getting up anytime soon.
And what with his head all attached to his body.
From here on, it's only gonna get worse.
And how much worse is up to you.
and welcome back to BioShock Infinite.
Bradburn, it's up to us to see they become Grecianines and don't return to mud. Get them young enough. You can mold them for life. Henry, fetch that black label lacquers, that 12-year-old single malt. Let's discuss this like men. Henry!
Okay, you're being way too noisy.
Now, let's get his lockpick.
But yeah, so the game is now in action stealth, with an emphasis on stealth instead of action. Huh. It matters how you win. You know, I've been reading Atlas Shrugged, and I'm not sure Ayn Rand would agree with that sentiment. Like, it's kind of hard to tell because everything is horribly muddled, but it seems like the point of being the best is... well, it's to be the best, not to be the winner. I mean, that's the point of, you know, playing the game, so to speak. The looters, as she calls them, well, they win. For a while, at least. But, that doesn't mean they're the best. In fact, it means the opposite. Okay, that is a nice touch, though.
Lockpicking can be easy with the right tools and know-how. Use your lockpick to probe a pin. A neutral pin will open the door. A blue pin will open the door and knock free a noisemaker. A red pin will open the door, but also sound an alarm.
Simple enough. Just a 6-pin tumbler. But there's an alarm. That could come in handy, though.
Yeah, what she means by that is that, raising an alarm could potentially get someone to come over, you know, get them nearby, allow you to knock them out, if you know, hide in the right area.
Isn't it mine to enjoy? No, says Peter the parasite. We all deserve a piece. If I earn a nickel, isn't it my right to buy candy if I see fit? No, says Peter the parasite. You must only buy fruits and vegetables. If I can afford to see the doctor, is it my concern that others cannot? No, says the damnable parasite. We must all crowd our way into the physician's office. Ryan the lion says, chew on that, you parasite.
Now there's your difficulty there. You only got one block, and you need to write the number 11.
Hello, children. I'm Ryan the lion. I'm here to tell you about Peter the parasite.
Alright, that's just going into repeat.
If I bake a pie, isn't it mine to enjoy?
Oh, I've done this exercise.
The parasite.
You know, what words do you associate with X?
If I earn a nickel, isn't it
Looks like the kids were,
if I see fit?
writing things out themselves.
Peter the parasite. You must only buy fruits.
Okay, then. It's too bad they're all bent out of shape, though. The darts, I mean.
No, says the damnable parasite. We must all crowd our way into the physician's.
Huh. Kinda makes you wonder what what was on that rack before. Alright, that was the last place I needed to check.
You sure you're ready to use that?
It's a crossbow. Looks like the bolt delivers some kind of sleep agent. Probably phencyclidine or sodium thiopental. They had all kinds of books in my tower. How do you think I always knew what ammo to toss you?
Knowing ain't the same as being ready.
Why don't you ask Comstock how ready I was?
Your father's blood runs in your veins, but it doesn't have to be on your hands.
And what does
It's up to you.
Those who cannot create will always steal from those who do. Where is your empathy? Asks Peter the parasite while he picks your pocket. Do you know this word? Empathy. You'll find it in the dictionary under L-I-E. All right, boys and girls. What does Ryan the Lion tell us about the tragedy of the commons? Peter the parasite. I heard that.
Uh-oh.
Young lady, come out here this instant.
Don't think I want to.
That's business. Incessant, unbounded prying into my respectable entrepreneurial affairs.
Well. Anyway, so what Booker and Elizabeth were basically talking about a little while ago is the fact that you can play this DLC, Burial at Sea 2, completely non-lethally. Like, as opposed to the main game and the first DLC. In this case, you are entirely able to get through the game to knock out everybody without murdering anyone. Now, you do give them a lot of headaches, and there's always the usual argument about just how non-lethal is non-lethal. But we'll just ignore that argument because game mechanics.
First, the law gets bribery. Then, you'll want some fella in my privy advising how I defecate. What's next? Martial law?
Jeez, dude, way to slippery slope that argument.
Harassment.
Although I do have to wonder why he was against bribery. I mean, what really is bribery in a libertarian society? And I will say that I will be playing through this entire DLC non-lethally, for my thief cred, if for no other reason.
I thought Rapture was open for business.
Jesus, that dude's loud.
Well, what?
At least I nailed him in time. See, if you use a melee against a guy who's aware of you, that does not knock him out. That just knocks him back a bit. You have to use other means. Like one of the several lethal weapons that are available, such as the handgun. Or you can use the tranquilizer darts. I just want to make sure that the cylinder's full. But yeah, this game, this DLC is definitely intended to be played as stealth. You're not given enough ammunition to take everybody down the hard way, like even less than what you had in the previous DLC. And that's the back way we came, so... Ah, here's the exit. Nice big bright red letters. Because you're not one of them. Wonder how often that works here. I mean, I know that does work in, like, real life, but seems like that would be particularly effective here. Yeah, way to shame the kids there, guys.
Look, Suchong. That's the name you had me tell Atlas.
I don't follow.
Looks like this character Suchong has taken over the Silverfin restaurant. That's where the tear was that I used when I first came to Rapture looking for Comstock. Before this place was turned into a prison.
But the first time you came to Rapture was in 1960, with Booker. When you drowned some...
Over a year from now. Yeah, that's right. When I could see all the doors, it all made sense, but now it's just a jumble.
Elizabeth, you're bleeding.
Now I know what it feels like. All right, if we're gonna find Suchong, the Silverfin is the place to start. I know the way.
I'm not sure what's going on with the timing here. Let's watch this. No.
Are you in the know? There has been a lot of idle talk from gadflies and naysayers following the nationalization of Fontaine Futuristics. I believe in free men and free markets, but I also believe in my city. And Frank Fontaine's purpose was nothing less than the destruction of Rapture. It was he who gave comfort to the laggards and layabouts. It was he who coddled the tramps and vagabonds. Fontaine was poisoning the people of Rapture. But his venom wasn't made of arsenic or strychnine. No. It was concocted from something far deadlier. It was brewed from altruism. Now you know.
Okay, let me see if I've got this straight. So that video was copyright 1958, which implies that this department store has been a prison for at least that long, but Elizabeth came here at the end of 1959 and it wasn't. And now she's saying that that was 1960 when she got her convoluted revenge against Comstock, as if that was some other point in time, even though we only just came back a couple hours after we left, and I don't get it.
Are you in the know?
Human reproduction is vitally important to society, but there is no reason that the act of copulation cannot be pleasurable as well. Remember these tips. Sex is egotistical. Without self-esteem, those participating in coitus are revealed to be fraudulent, hypocritical animals. Ego is indispensable in the bedroom. Negotiate with your mate. Intercourse can be mutually beneficial to both parties. Set out expectations with your partner beforehand, outlining the services you will provide one another, and hold them to their side of the deal. Never forget, oral contracts and handshake deals are for starry-eyed gigolos. Always get it in writing. Your pleasure is your business. Remember, you come first. Nobody's going to keep an eye on your pleasure except you. Don't be left high and dry. Armed with this knowledge, go forth now and enjoy Sexual Congress the Rapture way.
Now you know.
It's kind of sounding like, whoever orgasms first is the victor. Well, let's get in here. Now, this area is entirely optional, by the way.
I was here as well. Right after I came through, I needed something to wear that was a little more Rapture appropriate.
I'm not sure if you would find something here that was like, actually walking around Rapture appropriate.
Well, you didn't have these books in my tower.
Didn't you see them the first time you came by? Oh, nice. Yeah. Country Girl. Gender Bender, that one's pretty obvious. Chris, of course. Few names are quite so non-gendered as Chris. Mother may I.
Dear Madam, I have received your letter regarding our new line of peeping Tom plasmids and wish to respond thusly. Tough luck. This is Rapture, miss. What my customers do with my product is their business. If you are feeling uncomfortable, you are more than welcome to line the walls of your home in lead. If you wish, I could direct you to a reputable supplier.
There's a hell of a thing. So the only tricky thing, by the way, is that the lockpick, as it's going back and forth, sometimes it'll just sort of randomly change direction in the middle. So you can get tripped up. This is a nice touch. Apparently they've got a lot of admirers, but not much of a preference to spare time on them. And what do we have here?
Hey, there you are.
Now where's all the battle damage? Looks brand new.
How many times have I asked Antonio for lockers with actual locks on them? I come back from lunch and the ensemble I just bought is gone. Stolen. But here's what takes the cake. The thief left an outfit in exchange. At first I was gonna toss that thing, but then I kind of fell in love with it. It's an old-timey number with a corset, no less. It ain't exactly today's fashion, but I'm a girl who can tell good craftsmanship when she sees it.
Well, it's now she can do period dances.
Disappear from sight, see through walls, and sneak up on your foes.
Oh yeah, this is a good one.
Splicers. I could use this plasmid and see them through the walls, or if worst comes to worst, turn completely invisible and get the drop on them.
And for reference, your ability to see through walls only lasts for as long as you're standing still. Like you can see just there, I moved,
I get some work.
I could no longer see them. Oh dear. One of them's looking this way.
I told Sandra Cohn I'm always ready to cut a record. I put on a show. Said he'd call.
Okay, so if that guy on the left there would just move from where he's standing. And by the way, to activate invisibility, you need to hold down the button instead of just pressing it once. And if he's not going to move, I'm going to demonstrate invisibility. Now it does continuously run down your Eve meter, so that's why I went for the range shot instead of...
What did you mean before when you said you were in Paris?
It wasn't really Paris. It was more of the world as I want to see it. I suppose I wasn't really happy there. We'd all be better off, us to wits, if we could leave well enough alone.
And you know, considering that she's gone through the whole, bleeding nose thing, it's actually hard to say whether what she saw was even real in the sense of it being an infinite universe.
Why are my hands all red? This rub is blood.
That's weird. Every time I try to jump to that, I stand up instead.
6 times a night. On Friday. Only way to be sure. Hello?
Alright, important note. Landing is a little too loud, but if you land immediately behind them, you do have enough time to knock them out. But as I said, that entire area there was optional, just to get this extremely broken plasmid, by the way. I mean, it's not broken yet, but it will be once I get the 2 upgrades for it. I see the game's making a point here.
Intellectual superhumans who, in the act of their becoming...
Alright, let's just get the secondary weapon straightened up here.
Complete revolution. One mind at a time.
Let's try this out.
Most curious.
Yep, gets people running in the right direction, so you can sneak past them.
Hard enough, the parasite will reveal.
Nice touch with her just pushing the button.
I could see everything. Every possible moment. And now...
You're just like everyone else.
Why? Why, because I died here? If I'm just like everyone else, I can't help Sally. I can't even get back to where I was.
If you don't mind me asking, love, why are you talking to nobody? If I had pegged you for a loon, I might have had second thoughts on our arrangement.
I'll hold up my end, but I better find the girl the way I left her.
You're in no position to make demands. But I must confess, I do like a bit of sass in a lass.
And now a music break.
Why work hard? Just put food on the table. And if the good life is deserved, then I gotta ask why. Why don't I have a slice of that pie? Why, oh why can't I have a slice of that pie? If I can't have it, why can't I? Why can't I have a slice of that pie?
I'm serious. This is the entire rest of the video here.
Atlas got a secret. You're not in this alone. Got a helping hand for you. Yeah, you ain't just on your own. We stick together. We won't put up with their lies. Then we're all gonna have a slice of that pie. Why, oh why can't I have a slice of that pie? If I can't have it, why can't I? Why can't I have a slice of that pie?
What up, Victor? I've been told this town was friendly to free enterprise.
Why not throw in your lot with someone who's got your back? Cause Atlas is the only one who can get Rapture back on track. Ryan talks good game like any suit and tie, but his promise of opportunity is just pie in the sky. Why, oh why can't I have a slice of that pie? If I can't have it, why can't I? Why can't I have a slice of that pie?
Well, that was fun, but it looks like he's over. So, until next time. Before I start into today's History Corner, I'd like to begin with a few words. Piss, shit, screwing, fucking, slut, bitch, bastard, son of a bitch, asshole, douchebag, prick, cock, pussy, and cunt. And now that I've made at least a few of you uncomfortable by saying the magic words of English, let's discuss the history of censorship. Political censorship. It's kind of hard to point to a moment when political censorship began, mostly because it didn't. Censorship always was. Politically and culturally biased stories are the norm, not the exception. And the concept of non-fiction as separate from fiction had to be invented. Before then, you had tall tales about folk heroes and made-up stories about anthropomorphic beings that represented animals, parts of the landscape, and even entirely non-physical concepts. And while these tales would try to explain why the world is the way that it is, both physically and politically, over time, the stories grew and developed in new directions as each storyteller applied a personal touch and reshaped the focus for contemporary audiences. And while that happens even now, the difference is that without a written or pictorial record, the original versions became lost to history. Thus, what started as small, reasonable tales about people who may have actually existed eventually spiraled out to become the myths and legends which we have recorded. Perhaps the earliest records we have of someone who spoke his mind and refused to bow to political and social pressure is Plato's account of Socrates. See, Socrates' whole thing was to ask questions and get people to show a little skepticism about the premises that they thought were basic, that they thought were unquestionably true. The purpose of this kind of debate, dialectics, is to open every aspect of the world to the scientific method, to test every fact rigorously and without exception in order to find out which ones are the most accurate to real life and which ones were merely assumed to be accurate. Anyway, the existing powers in Athens didn't like the way Socrates was corrupting the youth by having them ask these questions, because it was leading them to doubt the politicians, the gods, and society itself. And so the politicians and the established classes in Athens accused Socrates of corrupting the youth, heresy, and atheism. So basically the first thing Socrates does during the trial, at least in the account of Plato's Apology, in which, for the record, Socrates is not at all apologetic, is he points out that it's impossible for him to simultaneously be an atheist and a heretic, and therefore those two charges are obviously false. He then tells the jury that they can convict him if they want, but he won't stop teaching philosophy and pestering people until the day he dies. The vote is close, but the jury of several hundred Athenians find Socrates guilty, and so both he and the plaintiffs propose a punishment. The plaintiffs demand death, and Socrates suggests that they reward him instead for being such a good influence on the citizens of Athens. But once he puts jokes aside, he eventually decides on a reasonable fine to be paid by himself and his supporters. However, the jurors turn out not to have a sense of humor, and they sentence Socrates to death by hemlock. The other big move towards objective reporting was Herodotus and Thucydides, the fathers of history and scientific history, respectively. Herodotus compiled a history of the Greco-Persian Wars, and while he made mistakes like believing witnesses and second-hand accounts at face value, and filling in the blanks with acts of God and personal moralizing, the fact is that he was more objective than anyone else we know of who came before him. On the other hand, he wasn't nearly as thorough or as skeptical as Thucydides, who recorded the wars that took place between Athens and Sparta. Thucydides recorded multiple accounts of the same events to draw up a sensible picture, and he refused to blame anything on the gods when a more reasonable explanation was at hand. As such, his accounts may have been the first unbiased, or at least minimally biased stories the world has ever known. Still, the idea of an objective viewpoint would wind up lying fallow even past the invention and spread of the printing press. After all, the people using these presses to get their messages heard weren't trying to be objective. They were trying to dissent, to publish their own viewpoint in opposition to the existing order. And because of the political and religious dissent, and ultimately the civil and political wars brought on by these dissents, actual objective scientific facts wound up getting caught in the crossfire, as is the case today. For instance, Galileo Galilei had the misfortune to live in Italy during the height of the Protestant Reformation and the wars being fought over religion and the precedence of national leaders over the Catholic Pope, a reversal of the previous state of affairs. Martin Luther nailed the 95 Theses to his church's front door in 1570. John Calvin started the Reformed branch of Christianity in the 1530s. King Henry VIII of England broke with the Church in 1534. The 30 Years' War ran between 1618 and 1648, and Galileo happened to live between 1564 and 1642. If he had championed Copernicus's heliocentric system at any other time in history, the Church may have accepted it, or it may have quietly ignored it without taking a major stance on the issue. But Galileo came along at a time when the Catholic Church's authority was being questioned and overthrown in a big way, and they could not tolerate any alternate views from an Italian, no matter how scientific and rigorously researched they were. And to be fair, the Catholic Church didn't muzzle Galileo completely, at least not right away. Instead, they insisted that his heliocentric model should be considered an alternate viewpoint, one which should be taught alongside geocentrism, in order to allow the reader to decide which astronomical model is correct. And if this sounds like what's going on in American schools with evolution and intelligent design, that's because it is. The Church is a lot more decentralized, and there's more than just one guy acting as a spokesman for the scientific findings, but there are more than a few similarities between now and 400 years ago. One might even suggest that conservative Protestant denominations are losing their influence in much the same way as the old Catholic Church. So if open political censorship was the norm until recently, then what changed? The government. Democracy. Hence why it also showed up in ancient Greece and Rome, though at that point they were hampered by the lack of a printing press. But the purpose of a democracy is to split power between a number of opposing groups so that no one person or organization can collect too much power. And under such a government, it becomes important for each of these groups to have the ability to speak and publish in order to maintain their power base and to undermine the power bases of other groups by letting the public know what their enemies' leaders are doing with their power. It's a very self-interested way of keeping everyone honest, but for the most part it works. Or at least it works better than the alternatives. Moral censorship. Like it or not, moral and political censorship are very much tied together. Might makes right, after all, and the dominant culture of a society will have mores and morals that are very often at odds with minority cultures and with the particular views of specific individuals. Individuals and subcultures which are often able to change the views of the dominant culture by exposing the general public to their viewpoint through the medium of stories and artwork. The Protestant Reformation was just as much about morality and religion as it was about politics and changing cultures, so yes, moral censorship most certainly springs from the same source as political censorship. There are some differences, however. Moral censorship is geared more towards the "what about the kids" argument, this idea that children must be sheltered from the ugly and disgusting aspects of life, although the definition of ugly and disgusting can vary significantly from one society to another. Regardless of the details, however, it means that even in nations with a right to a free press, governments, public institutions, and private companies can use moralism as an excuse to ban books and artwork deemed offensive on the grounds of exposing impressionable and sensitive children to things like swear words, violence, sex, and evil people doing evil things and getting away with it. And are children impressionable? Yes, to a certain extent they are. I remember learning about swear words when I saw Spaceballs at around the age of 4 or 5. And I remember that when I was in middle school I read a couple books that featured dragons and I thought that, hey, maybe I could turn into one if I wished hard enough. Turns out I couldn't. These days I'm plenty happy with being a human. A bit of personal growth I kinda wish more people would go through, but, well, what can you do? But here's the thing. After I heard curse words, my parents told me they were bad and not to be said, and so I didn't say them. Now, not every child is as obedient as I was, but the point remains that exposure is one thing, but real life and the people in it are far more important to a child's development than any story, than any TV show or movie. And I would say that parents do have some right to define the education of their children, but personally speaking, I believe that exposure and context are far more effective teaching methods than ignorance and avoidance. Because once exposure happens anyway, and it'll happen, there's really no telling what the kids or former kids will do with this new information. And if you encounter something that truly clicks with you, that speaks to you and allows you to understand yourself in a way you couldn't before, that's only because that thing was inside you all along. You simply lack the means to comprehend and discuss it. That's why it can sometimes seem like a given story or a person can turn someone gay. That person was always homosexual, but he or she did not understand what homosexuality was until he or she was exposed to the idea of gayness. In the United States, an early and particularly notorious law against indecency was the Comstock Act of 1873, and I'm not entirely sure if the name is a coincidence or not. Probably not. The Comstock Act, championed by New York censor Anthony Comstock, banned not only obscene literature, but also contraceptives and abortion medications. Which means that while the act targeted pornography and even sexual education pamphlets, it was most directly aimed at the first-wave feminism movement. Thanks to this and New York state obscenity laws, Comstock personally oversaw the destruction of 15 tons of books, 142 tons of printing plates, and 4 million pictures. Curiously, the Comstock Act is still in effect, although major chunks of it have been overturned, and the rest simply isn't enforced anymore. Various media industries have also had to deal with censorship over the years, and in order to avoid dealing with state and national censorship boards like the New York board, which Comstock created, they turned to self-censorship instead. This gave rise to the Hays Production Code, which was in effect for films from the late 30s to the late 50s, and the Comics Code Authority, which basically forced comics to appeal only to kids from 1954 to the 1970s. And it is in large part responsible for why America thinks animation can't or shouldn't be aimed at adults. Broadcast media, radio and television, didn't get an overarching censorship board, but that's because the number of channels were limited until recently, so the corporations who ran them could employ their own network censors who would make sure the corporation didn't run afoul of public outcry, or worse. Over the course of the 20th century, outright censorship got replaced by rating systems, thus allowing for free expression and for parents to have some control over what their kids are exposed to. On the other hand, what gets what rating is very often arbitrary at best. These days, you've got the internet exposing everyone to everything, causing a right mess. Any schmuck, such as myself, can upload whatever he or she wants, and we're all posting so much of it that the moral crusaders among us simply can't keep up. So look forward to a new generation of wholly corrupted children destroying the vestiges of civilization. Or not. I guess we'll see. Personal thoughts. Question: what are swear words? How can any word cause offense? If not in everyone, then certainly in some. What is the magic in these words? Answer: the magic is that they are meant to offend. Sometimes you're angry, and you need to be able to communicate that anger. Sometimes you want to offend other people, and not specific people either, just people in general. You want to share your anger and frustration, and we even have a built-in system in our brains that physically relieves pain and calms us down when we swear. And if you're going to swear, you need some designated words, just like how you need specific words to discuss colors. So why do we avoid swearing around kids? Well, partly it's because we don't want to expose them to this level of anger, much like how we don't want to expose them to sexuality before we think they're ready. However, it's also because the words themselves deal with societal taboos: sexuality, body functions, and blasphemy. That's the idea, after all. You're angry to the point where you don't care about abiding by societal restrictions anymore. But then you've got subcultures that actively want to offend a majority of people, and members of these subcultures will use curse words casually. But I think that's a bad idea myself. When you use swear words for everything, you can no longer use them for emphasis, and people won't be able to understand just how upset you are. So try not to swear too much, folks. If you don't do it for the children, do it for the sake of your emotional communication. Thanks for joining me again in History Corner, and I hope I'll see you soon.